welcome to our community Bible study for Thursday, July the 22nd. We are reading in Genesis, chapters 10 through 12, and the title is From Noah to Abraham. So let us begin here. Chapter 10 is basically a list of chronology of Noah's descendants. And instead of reading all of that, because it's pretty extensive, I've just tried to hit the highlights of what's important from this list. Remember, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I wouldn't remember them either, except I'm reading, so that's fine. But it says, from these 3 sons, the nation spread out over the earth after the flood. Japheth, many of his descendants were maritime people. That is how the Bible puts it. So I'm presuming that they were around the Mediterranean Sea or maybe even over in the Persian Gulf. Ham had 4 sons. You'll recognize a name or two: Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Including in their lands, if you go through the whole list of them, were nations of Babylon and Assyria, as well as cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, and Calah. Included in these groups of people are people that we'll hear about later in the Bible: the Philistines, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites. And then Shem, his descendants lived in the eastern hill country. And I am not sure whether that means east into the kingdom of Jordan or east maybe going towards Persia and what is now Iran. But that was, Shem is part of the lineage that comes down to Abraham. So basically this is a tracing of Abraham's family tree. Noah, 3 sons, 8 generations later to Terah, who was Abram, or Abraham's father. And then we trace on from there. So, it's important because Abraham and his family are the central characters, really, of the book of Genesis. And but the idea is that Noah and his 3 sons and their families and their descendants then repopulated the earth, or at least that part of the world. So that is really what is going on in Genesis 10. Now, it's interesting because 10 and then chapter 12 all then follow the historical pattern. It's the history, then you go on. In the middle is chapter 11, which is the Tower of Babel. We'll read that in a second. But there are several places in the Bible where it seems to me where there is a pretty good direct, the history goes from this year to this year to this year, and it kind of moves forward. But every once in a while, there is a story that it seems like gets inserted at probably the right places, but that isn't necessarily connected with that particular storyline. And the book of Job is one of those. And here we have the Genesis 11 about the Tower of Babel. So let's read Genesis 11. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. And we think that is still in what is now Iraq, probably not far from the Euphrates River. The people said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." So they used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the earth." I will take a break here. It seems to me that this records one of those transitional times in human technology. We are familiar with that ancient history is divided into the Bronze Age, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and those are descriptions of when human beings figured out how to create new tools, use new elements for tools and things, and they move forward in that. And this here, I believe, is one of those transitions from, instead of cutting stone and hauling it to make buildings, they learned to make bricks and use tar for mortar, and evidently mastered that. And it seems to me that that allows people to make buildings wherever they wanted to, as long as they could get together the right ingredients for the bricks and the mortar. And that was probably a transforming time. So that is what allowed them to be able to make this tower that was evidently bigger and taller than any other in that pace in history. In our little study guide, I have a sort of a cartoon drawing that looks like one of the ancient Babylonian ziggurats that we have record of. I looked online at what the Tower of Babel might have looked like, and you have artists who draw all kinds of things, including some that look a little more modern than they probably ought to be, but this one seemed a little more closer to the reality. So, they created this tower and this city that we might make a name for ourselves. They're trying to, this is about pride, this is about trying to make sure that they were remembered. Verse 5, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. And the Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they may not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world, and from there the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth. So I have a couple questions. Number one is, what's the problem with people working together? I mean, that's how we accomplish great things. And here there was the Tower of Babel, and today we have space stations. And so we've accomplished quite a bit by working together. Was God really threatened by their potential? Or was it more about that phrase where they had a pride to make a name for themselves? Human beings trying to, instead of like Noah following directions from God, who built the largest boat that existed for a long time, to human beings trying to do something for their own pride and honor and prestige. And so I wonder if that is really more of what is going on here. And so the Tower of Babel was partially built, and then they were scattered. And that is why we have different languages today. I don't know how many languages there are in the world today, but there's a whole bunch. So then we'll just kind of go to chapter, is it 12? Yeah, it's 12. And it's about Abraham being called. So after the Tower of Babel, we go back to this timeline of 8 generations from Noah to Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And I've summarized this. Haran becomes the father of Lot. We learn about them later. Abraham and Nahor also married. Abram, he was called Abram at that point. His wife was Sarah. And she was childless because she was not able to conceive. And they were living in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Ur, we think, is probably near the mouth of where the Tigris and Euphrates run into the Persian Gulf. But Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, daughter-in-law Sarah, and they set out from Ur to go to Canaan But when they came to Haran, which is upstream on the Euphrates River, probably almost near where Syria and Turkey meet today, they settled there instead. They didn't finish the journey. But then, chapter 12, the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." And then Lord makes this promise that must have blown Abram away. "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Now, we don't have a record of Abram's thoughts or even his response to the Lord verbally expressing what he was thinking, but that's a pretty impressive promise. And so, verse 4, Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran, and he took Sarah, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they accumulated, all the people they acquired, so they had a lot of servants, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. And we know the land of Canaan is what is today Israel. So we'll finish this little section here. Abram traveled through the land as far as the great tree of Morah at Shechem. And Shechem is a city that's remembered even past then. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." That's the great promise of Abraham and his descendants to the land of Canaan, which is now Israel. So he built an altar there to the Lord, there at Shechem, who had appeared to him. From there, Abram went on to the hills east of Bethel, pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev, which is the desert further south. So this is Abram's migration from the Fertile Crescent of Tigris and Euphrates up to Haran, almost Turkey, and then God directed him to come all the way down into the land of Canaan. Shechem and Bethel are the two cities that you will recognize further along in our study of the Old Testament then. We're going to stop here today, and we'll talk about Abram in Egypt next time, and also a little more about Abram and Sarah being childless, but God's still promising that they will be the leaders of a great nation through their descendants. So, thank you for joining us. Remember, if God comes and makes a promise, He's going to keep it. God bless you.